On today's What Do We Do podcast, we're joined by Alexandra Sippala. Allie is the founder and president of One Body Genetics, and she's here today to break down the myths, the magic, and the money of genetic engineering. And so whether you're Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, Millennial, Baby Boomer, or even the brand new Gen Alpha, this podcast has something for you. So hit the subscribe button, give us a follow, and let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the What Do We Do podcast. I'm your host, Dewey Steffen, and this is another guest episode. These are episodes where we bring on into the studio a leader from the community who has a story to tell, knowledge to share, and advice to give. And then we have them come on in to join us to drop that wisdom on all of us. And as a community, we are a team where together everyone achieves more. And today's topic is on genetics, the science and the business. So who better to have in the studio today than Allie Sippala? Allie is the founder and CEO of One Body Genetics. Allie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dewey. Thanks so much for having me. It's so good to be here.
Well, I'm excited to spend the next hour with you, and I know our audience is as well. And so to start the show, Allie, besides thank you for being here, we like to start with a game we call high-low. And what that means is, will you share with us the high point and low point of your career to this point?
All right. Well, I'll start with the high because it's so fresh. So I just launched my company, One Body Genetics, and that is the high. It's been a long time coming. And the journey to start this business took over a year and a half. And I would say that was the low part. Is I thought I could get it up and running in a couple months. I like to get things going right away. And it took a little bit longer than I thought, but it was all in God's timing, and I'm ready to get started.
That's fantastic. And so the high point would then be what? Just the launch that just happened?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, to finally be running patient samples and helping people understand more about their genetics and what they can do.
Well, that's fantastic. So let's start there before we get into the details, or the weeds as we can call them. Let's talk about just the basics, like from your perspective or from the definition, what is genetics?
Genetics is your body's makeup, and everyone's body is unique, and that's what's so great. So right now in medicine, we have more of a one-size-fits-all approach, but now we're getting more into personalized medicine. So what's best for me is not necessarily what's best for you. So with one of the first types of testing we're doing is pharmacogenomics testing, and that looks at drug-to-gene interactions. So when the doctor prescribes me a medicine, he has multiple options of which ones he can prescribe for me. And this test will narrow down and say, give Allie this dose of this medication, give Dewey this dose of this medication. And it goes for all fields of medicine, can use this type of testing.
But why is that really important? Because, I mean, we are all humans. And so the basic idea is everything is the same for all of us. We need water. We need nourishment. If you do a certain thing, your life will be shortened. If you don't do a certain thing, your life will be lengthened. So I guess I understand it, and I'm sure many of our followers and our listeners do as well. But let's really dumb it down. And so what does it matter? We can all take the same aspirin. We can all take the same vitamin C. Isn't it really where it's one size fits all? It doesn't really matter?
It does. So in your genetic makeup, we have different mutations, and those mutations affect our metabolism. So the way that I process a drug is probably going to be different than the way you process a drug. Or maybe we process some drugs the same and other drugs different. So it all depends on the code in our genetics. So what this test will do is so often if you go to the doctor, sometimes you have to try, like in the case of antidepressants, multiple antidepressants before you find the one that's right for you. Well, this test will be like, take the guesswork out. this is the one that's going to work for the patient, and then the patient can get help quicker. Or like with a cardiology, like a cardiologist, you can tell the patient what type of medication. Any field of medicine, doctors have multiple options, and this just helps the doctor know which one's going to work best for you.
Now that makes a lot of sense to me, to where you do go to the doctor and sometimes they don't know exactly what it is, or maybe they even do and they give you a prescription and that doesn't seem to work. So that makes some sense to me, that maybe takes the guesswork out of it. But Allie, along those same lines, isn't this already out there? Not necessarily, what you and your company are doing specifically, but the idea of genetic testing, isn't that something that's been around for a long time?
Yeah, it has been around, and pharmacogenomics testing is not special to my lab. Like, there are other labs doing it, but I think we need more labs doing it, and more health insurance companies are covering it. Medicare is covering this type of testing, so it's something that's definitely needed, and especially with seniors. So the average senior is on 15 different medications. Well, one medication that you're taking could be causing side effects, and this genetic test could say, oh, don't take this medication, it's actually going to cause you side effects. Well, then you can also eliminate some of the other medications you're taking to remove some of those side effects as well. And one of the most life-changing, I've actually seen this situation a couple times now, where there's been patients who have been wheelchair bound, and when the doctor, they do this test, and then the doctor makes adjustments to their medications and they can walk again. And that's how limiting some of these drugs are taking, and we don't even realize. And the more drugs we take, they start to compound. So dialing in on what works best for you is huge. And drug companies are starting to realize this too, and they're starting to get into more personalized drugs for people because, while we are all similar, we do have certain genetic differences, and that can have a huge impact on our lives.
Is it a situation where it's a combination of figuring out what your personal makeup is and then you can be preventative? Or is it a situation where you can figure out your certain situation, like you mentioned with the seniors, and then it can be rehabilitating or just helpful? Like, how does it all fit from one end of the spectrum to the other?
So with medication, I wouldn't say that's the most preventative approach. However, we do have nutrigenomics testing, which we'll be launching soon, and that's more preventative medicine, and that's really cool because that looks at what foods are best for your genes. So, and this is something that has been hard for me to learn myself, is I came from I grew up eating very healthy. All fruits and vegetables are good for you, but that's actually not true. So there's something called sulforaphane, which is in cruciferous vegetables, so like broccoli and cauliflower. And for you, it could prevent cancer. There's some people that will say it could even reverse cancer. It's that powerful for you. But then for me, it could cause an autoimmune issue. So even with something that we know, like broccoli, that we think is healthy for everyone, might not necessarily be what's right for everyone. So just dialing in on your nutrition, it can also tell you what time of day to eat is best for you, what type of workouts are best for you. And then there's even genes, which I think is so cool because I know you're into sports too. There's a gene that actually will tell you if you work well under pressure or not. So imagine if you're the coach of a sports team and you have your players' genetic profiles in front of you and you're like, okay, well, we got to make sure this guy gets the ball because he's going to be able to make the shot and not the other guy on the team. So even with sports teams, it's so cool because a lot of them eat and train the same, but imagine how much better we could be if we individualized workouts and nutrition plans just a little bit more, and then you had everyone leveling up, and then your whole team levels up too.
Yeah, no, I know that's something that actually goes on now, that on these high performing teams or these high performing athletes, they absolutely not just have a nutritionist, but now it's at that next level. And certainly with the science, and I always go to the Olympics and how they used to swim, with the Speedos, then they went to the full suits, and milliseconds matter.
Yes.
So all of that makes some sense to me. What about, as we kind of break this down, with big pharma, or with the idea of trying to find these solutions to make us be better, live longer, have less illnesses? isn't that counterintuitive of what big pharma, that society says they're there to not have us be better? They want us to have issues, and that's how they make, how they make all their money is with, drugs and medicines and helping us stay sick.
I mean, I don't know what big pharma's doing, and obviously, like I have a concern with them as well. But the more they know about our genes too, the better medicines they can make for us. And I guess that could be controversial because I know like some of the people will say they want us to be on medicines forever. So are they engineering medicines to keep us on longer? I'm not sure, but optimistically, in theory, the more we know about our genes, the better medicines we'll be able to create to live healthier lives. But hopefully we can do as much as we can without medicine.
No, for sure. And, again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all in that regard. I certainly am aware of what goes on and what is said. And I always kind of push back when people say, that big pharma, is a mastermind machine of trying to create issues. And although I understand that, and maybe there's situations of that, the other side's true to where I think like the life expectancy of a man and a woman is double what it was, 100 years ago or something. So it's a situation where we are living longer. Now 100 isn't the end game. 120 is the new target, right? And so with genetics, genetic engineering, and genetic testing, it's not just with the human body per se and per person, but is it something that happens with food, with other animals, besides human beings? Like, what is just the possibilities of genetic and genetic testing?
They're endless. There's so much you can do. There's so much we don't even know yet, right? So for my lab personally, we're going to start off with the pharmacogenomics testing and then move into preventative, which is nutrigenomics. And then there's so much going on with cancer and genetics right now too. And there's some really great tests that they have out there, and there's some that need improvement. So we're learning so much, and I feel like every year there's so many more things that we can do with genetics and even molecular testing. And so like COVID started, like that was molecular testing. And I think that's what everyone got, everyone really excited about molecular testing is everyone has these machines now. So what other tests can we do with them, and what else can we do to help people?
Yeah, I think it's great. And it is a little known fact, or I'll provide it as a fast fact, that my mom has a PhD in microbiology. And so genetic engineering, I grew up with that lingo and that language in my house, many decades ago. And I always share a story that back then, my mom really kept processed food out of the house. And
Yes.
I was eating carob chips instead of chocolate chips. I was having banana chips instead of potato chips. And the peanut butter that I had a little oil ring at the top, and it wasn't processed. And at the time, I'm like, this doesn't taste that good.
Yeah.
It's not as fun. I'm not as cool at school. But I think here we are, decades later, to where I might have less health issues than some of my peer group that may have had more of a processed food diet. So certainly, in our family, we also talk about that you are prone genetically. And so a lot of it is in your DNA, as they say. So what does that mean? Where if it's in your DNA, you're prone to something, or maybe you have a genetic, bias for something versus the world of broccoli versus Doritos?
So there's two factors, like there's genetic and environmental with anything. And I would even bring in spiritual because I'm spiritual personally. But if you have a genetic predisposition for something, that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen to you, right? Like you still have environmental factors, which are your lifestyle factors and what kind of, like where you live and what you eat. And if you're training, like what kind of sports you're doing. So there's so many things. So just because your genetics say that you're predisposed to like X, Y, or Z cancer, that doesn't mean you're going to have that cancer. There's still a lot that you can do on your end.
All right, Allie, well, I totally get all that, and that makes a lot of sense. So if we're doing the tests, and then we're getting an idea of what the sequence is or what would be something to help us as individuals, then there's the whole privacy and the whole security of either the DNA, the genetics, or the tests themselves. So what's the big deal there?
Yes. So that was what happened with 23andMe, right? So you do this genetic testing, and when you're like filling out the form, they ask you, is it okay if we share your data? And 80% of people check yes. And so with that, your private genetic makeup is being shared with who knows who, right? So that's why it's important that your genetic testing results are at a lab that's secure and private, and no one has access to your results other than you and your doctor.
Is it really that big of a deal though? Like why, like what are they going to do with that information if, I mean, all it could do is help you become better?
Right. So there's laws in place to protect you, but also like people have concerns with, well, what if insurance companies get this information, or what if like the fast food or like these processed food industry gets this information, and then they're like dialing things to make your foods even more addictive, or there's just so many different things, or to sell it to other people. So it's just another point of consumer data about you. So just, I think keeping it to you and your doctor is the best way to go.
Understood. And that's kind of very similar to having your social security number. It's kind of any other your documents, and certainly all of your health records are private for a reason.
Right.
It is your personal information, right?
Yes.
And understanding your DNA, your genetic makeup, that is individual. Every single person on the planet has a separate and distinct DNA. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. And so I think with 23andMe, and again, this is just from the headlines, I haven't done deep research on it, but I know that there's all kinds of ways people can get your DNA if they wanted to be nefarious about it. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I think something with 23andMe or other places, maybe even your testing center, would be if you're housing all of this data and then there's a breach or a theft, it's not just one person's randoms and they have to figure out who that is. They have it all categorized, and it's just a shelf. I think at 23andMe was 7 million people perhaps. So is that kind of a worry as well?
Well, not for, so I'm in a clinical lab, and we have a very strict laws and HIPAA privacy, so we're really good at protecting your data. And then when you do like these more genetic tests that are just for fun and they're not in a clinical environment, and then they don't have to go to the same standards, I think that's when the concern is. And then also just like reading the boxes that you check off and like who you're signing your DNA away to.
Well, and I think that's a great place to pivot. And we'll start now to talk about maybe the business of genetics and genetic engineering and genetic testing. And so before we jump into it, one of the first conversations we had about this topic was this past summer. And I mentioned to you the story about 23andMe, about how I had bought the kit because I was curious about my ancestry. I wasn't thinking about if I was predisposed for any type of medical or situation along my health. It was just curious about where I came from.
Yeah.
And again, knowing that in my family, my mother is very well versed in the same area of science that you are. And I told her I was going to do it. And she said, "You're crazy. Why would you let anybody have your identity? This is worse than your driver's license breaching that. This is the most important identity that you have, and so you should not give that to anyone." And again, I said, "Well, Mom, maybe this is generational, because you know what? Like, I don't know what they would do with it." And she said, "It doesn't matter." And so you really, you didn't know that conversation that I had with my mom, but you said the same thing at lunch, that you were very adamant that you shouldn't just give these things to, novelty type of companies. So maybe talk about that a little bit more in detail.
Again, it's like a personal choice. I personally wouldn't do it. We don't know we don't know for sure what they're going to do with your data, right? It's just a risk, and it's a risk that I would prefer not to take.
Makes some sense. And then again, as I've talked deeper, whether it's with you, my mom and other scientists, it has been mentioned or reminded that you can really get someone's DNA just by off of the drinking glass, right? That comes from the saliva and everything else. So it's not where, just so for all of our audience out there listening and all of our audience out there viewing, that it's not something where it's in this petri dish that if they get that, it's the only place in the world it is, right? So it's all out there. But as you said, just take good measure, and certainly just know what you're getting into. If you are one who's curious and knows that it's not secure and you want to find out where you're from and have the novelty of 23andMe, like you said, have at it. But if it's something that you're not really digging, you don't have to give your maiden name over the phone to the people at the bank, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And then the other thing too is like, there are like good things to share in your data, right? Like in certain research settings when we're looking how to like, when we're looking how to see how a cancer is going to affect someone and we need patient samples to make our test valid. You know, there's situations like that where it's good to share your DNA, like in certain research settings, and that's how we advance as a society. So there are like benefits to it, but then there's also like other companies where maybe they shouldn't have our data, but there's definitely a good side to it as well.
Yeah, I think we'd call that like open source coding,
Yeah.
right? To share it for the greater good. So I think it does come down to, again, what are the approaches of the company that you're working with and trying to get the information from. Sure.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about some business. So the business side of it. So you're a brand new business owner. You've said you've been working on this for maybe 2 years and you've just launched as of January 1st, 2025. So I'll give you a great big booyah for that.
Booyah.
That's
All right.
fantastic. So tell us about that journey. You may have worked some places before you started this, but talk maybe about your journey to where you are now, and then ultimately we'll talk about where you're going next.
All right. So I was the vice president of a clinical lab, and I joined the lab when we were just doing COVID. I helped bring on toxicology and blood work testing and other forms of molecular testing. And then genetics has always been my dream. Like since undergrad, I took a course in nutrigenomics and I just fell in love with genetics. And then it was like starting to become like a vision that could come to fruition, but we needed investors because the genetic testing is crazy expensive. So I found people that wanted to invest in me instead of that company, and that's how I started on my way. And there's just a lot of moving pieces to put together, and I've just been so blessed to have so many doors just open up for me, but at the same time, certain things took longer than I thought, and just having the patience to go through with that, and I'm just glad to be on the other side.
Well, I think it's exciting, and your undergrad is a Bachelor of Science, and then you have a Master in Business Administration, so you have an MBA, and I think that's great because you're in a field of science, but you're going to have to run a company and understand the business of it. I started my company, Great Lakes Wealth, over 8 years ago, and as you and I spoke prior, I told you that I know so much more now than I did 8 years ago, but there are so many things that I still on a day-to-day managing a company that I'm just figuring out as you go, or calling other people, to help you with that. So I can imagine the last 2 years of trying to figure it out and having to lean on others. And then I'm sure you've had advice that you thought was good that maybe wasn't. I'm sure you've had some advice that didn't sound like it was good, but it probably was. So how have you been able to navigate, the last few years up until getting your doors open? And then what do you see as a short-term excitement and deliverables and wins, but then also what do you think you have to continue to work on to keep it going, whether that's scale or spend money on some things or hiring employees, like the business side of it? Where's that come in?
So I think it goes back to how you say how we like share information together and we all get better together. And I have been so blessed to have so many amazing mentors in my life to guide me on this journey, and so many different people giving great advice. But then, like you said, there are times where there's too many cooks in the kitchen and it can get a little overwhelming. So just I find prayer very helpful, and just like using that discernment on what's the best path to take. And sometimes there's not necessarily like the best path, but there's multiple paths that will work, and there's multiple ways to get there. The short-term goal is starting with pharmacogenomics testing and just launching that. And then the medium-term goal, I guess, would be to expand. And then the long-term goal is, what I really want to do for genetic testing is just make it on a platform that's easy for everyone to understand. A genetic report is 40 pages long sometimes, and you go over it with your doctor and it can be a little overwhelming. So what I'm working on is putting together videos so people can view their results instead of trying to read them, and then they can understand it better. And how we are in our society right now, everyone's on our phone, we're constantly watching short little videos, and if we could watch our results and kind of be more immersed in them and just understand them better, I think that would make it way more exciting for the patient to be empowered to take control of their health. And then also to educate the community, right? So in the field of nutrigenomics, if people have a similar genetic background in a similar environment, they're probably going to have similar results, right? So then we can take that information and go into communities and help educate people on what's best for them to eat in their lifestyle.
Is it a situation where you're going to be torn between the science side of things and the helping of the community versus the business side of things? And again, at this point, let's not call it profit and loss, but just, again, managing something is different than being the scientist behind something or the artist behind something. You have to make sure you can make payroll, make sure you can pay the bills, so the business side and your MBA will serve you well. But as you want to get into communities or do different things, what kind of team are you building around you to help, with those other pieces of the puzzle?
So I have the most incredible lab director, and she's worked at different cancer places and is really familiar with genetic testing and has a crazy background. But what's really exciting too is she was more on the research side. So things that she's been doing for years are just coming now on the clinical side, right? So to have someone who's already been through this and has that experience is so beneficial. And then just to build, so I'll have my lab team, but I'm also starting a nonprofit as well. So then that's more of the side that will go out into the community and help them, because I believe that everyone should have access to this type of testing. So whether you can through your insurance, or if not, let's get this nonprofit going so everyone can be empowered with their genetics to make the best decisions for their health.
Yeah, right on. Let's talk about the testing for a second. Is it a swab that you do, or is it to draw some blood, or how is the test performed?
It's just a cheek swab. So the kit will either be mailed out to you, and then you just swab the inside of your cheek, put it back in the tube, mail it back, and it's easy, painless, no blood. And actually, the saliva is a better medium for this type of testing than blood anyway, so it's a win-win.
Okay, that's awesome. And then how long does it take, when you get the swab back to go and do all the tests, and what kind of results are there, and in this format that you envision, the video or whatever it is, what do you envision it looking like, the results?
So with pharmacogenomics testing, there's not going to be a video for that. So the swab comes in and you'll get an email to your portal, and you can log on and view your portal. And then you'll also get a little card that you can take with you to any doctor's appointment you go. That's basically a summary of your results. So no matter where you go, you have a little update for your doctor so they know what to prescribe. And then the other thing is we're constantly creating new drugs and making new discoveries about our genes. So every year your report will update. So you don't have to get tested. This is a once-in-a-lifetime test, but you can update your report and then have the insights on the new medications and discoveries that we've made about our genes.
Well, maybe talk about that a little bit more. So, okay, so you just have to take the test one time.
Yes.
And then your DNA, your genetic makeup is cataloged. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's cataloged. And then from there, a report is generated that may say what you're prone to, what you should do more of, what you should do less of. I don't know, whatever it would say. Is that kind of the start?
Yeah. And then as there's new discoveries that are made, then they just update the report with that information.
Got it. So then,
your sample, we don't just hold on to your sample forever, but based on the information that we already have, we can tell you more.
Okay. And then do you need to, either your side of the business or the patient need to then coordinate with other, I don't know, drug companies or other, I don't know, companies out there at all to facilitate getting better results, whether it's, I don't know, the right drug that you need or the right diet that you should be on? Like, how do you communicate the results that you give to your consumer to get them to where they need to go?
So the doctor has to prescribe this test. So you'll go to your doctor and say, I would like to have a pharmacogenomics test. And then your doctor will like write it the same way they would prescribe you blood work. And then that way, when you go back to your doctor, then your doctor is the one communicating the results with you. So they'll go over everything with you. And then that might be your primary care provider, right? But then you'll go to your cardiologist and you can take these results to your cardiologist and they'll also understand them and they'll be like, okay, this is what we need to do.
Is it going to be a situation where there are some doctors or some hospital systems that don't buy into this, or it cuts into some other, and this is back to business, to where it cuts into their economics? I've talked to other, inventors that have come up with, I don't even know, instruments or things that hospitals could use, but be making it common in the hospital might, create some issues financially, right? The more that, if I'll use a different example of a tire. If you had a tire that never ran out of tread, then the tires wouldn't be sold as frequently.
Right.
So in this case, maybe it's a bad example, but you go to the right physician and they get the results, and they really either don't buy the results, they don't adhere to the recommended action from the results. Like, how is it that people are buying in or not buying in on the medical side?
So I've never met a physician that didn't like this type of testing. It's a tool for them. And then it also helps their patients. So they've all seen an increase in the patient's quality of life with this test. So I think physicians are 100% on board. Hospitals are on board. Like, even if there's certain like emergency surgeries where you'll need parts of like a pharmacogenomics test before they even do a surgery. So like, if you're in a life-threatening situation and you have that card, then that just like speeds up the process in the hospital too. And it's benefiting all patients. So doctors and hospitals are on board, insurance companies are on board, it's saving them money too. And even like nursing homes, working with nursing homes, and the patients are able to stay there longer. So it benefits everyone.
That's fantastic. If it benefits everyone, who would be anti this happening? Groups in Congress for some reason, I have no idea. Just other businesses that are displaced, like who would be lobbying against this?
I can't think of anyone who would want to lobby against this. I mean, even a drug company would want this because they would like this genetic information to make more personalized medicine. So I think it's really just benefiting people. It's making doctors' lives easier. And it's just like helping our society live a better quality of life.
Yeah, I think that's great. And through technological innovations and through scientific discoveries, that does help us live healthier, happier, hopefully, and longer lives. And that is, I think the goal of it. And science is certainly instrumental in that. Before we do that, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and everyone out there in YouTube land or podcast nation. We're here with Allie Sippala. We're having a fantastic discussion on genetic testing and the science and the business behind it. As we get into, Allie, talking maybe about AI, and that seems to be the buzz. I would imagine that's even going to help it more because it'll solve some of the questions you have before you even ask the questions. I'm not sure, but is there any dialogue with AI related to this?
I think so. So with AI, you can use that to help communicate results better, right? So if you can have an AI video that communicates a patient's results in a way that's personalized and easy for them to understand, I think that could be very beneficial. And then in terms of like technology in a lab, like there are certain processes that we have humans do, but now there's also processes that robots do. So like as you expand and as you grow, like you still have humans operating the robots, but the robots can allow you to test more samples at once.
Fantastic. From the business side of it, as we continue down that road, you're going to need materials or machines. You'll need technology from vendors or from suppliers to help you do your part. So as we go down the business, infrastructure of all of this, do you see opportunities for our audience that's interested in the business side of it? What would be some of the investment opportunities that are there? Are they in companies direct like yours with the testing and what you'll do, certainly, but also, with, I don't know, any manufactured suppliers or anything that may be in the chain?
Yeah, absolutely. So also, other than with like labs, there's also like the companies that create these robots, right? So I know that one of the companies that I work with was actually started out as a startup and was on one of those, I guess like not crowdfunded, but you know what I mean? Those like, they have different like opportunities for different startups and they like launch them, and this company like really took off. And so there's a lot of cases like that where there's this new technology or just making the technology more affordable. Like lab equipment is like crazy expensive. And so there's other newer companies coming into this space to make it a little bit more affordable. And so I think there's an opportunity there.
In your situation, and you don't have to spill the beans since you just opened your doors January 1st, but is the end game for you to scale this? And I don't even know, have multiple lab locations around the country, or do all of the testing kits get mailed into one spot, short term, medium term, long term? And then ultimately, as a business owner, as someone who has an MBA and understands how Wall Street works and how business works, is it to sell the company one day? Is it to sell it, if so, to big pharma? Is it to sell it to, a healthcare system? What would be, either the end game if you have it, and or just different strategies that are out there?
Yes. So obviously, I would love to expand, and I have thought about it. So with the samples being mailed in, I would like another location on the other side of the country, so we could like have half the samples mailed up here and then another half mailed down there or something like that. So I think that was definitely an opportunity. And then as well as like I've thought about it, like would I want to sell the company after 5 years? But I think there's just so many different like opportunities to do in the lab space that I don't think I would be able to sell after 5 years. And there are other things that I would like to do. So I do have plans for stuff for other tests beyond genetic testing, but that is further down the line. So focusing on one thing at a time.
That's fantastic. Well, with that, let's pivot to a part of the show, which is my favorite part of the show, Allie. Everybody who's tuning in knows that this is the What Do We Do podcast for sure, and we're blessed with our audience. Thank you so much for tuning in. However, there is a moment when they want enough. They've had enough of Dewey, and they would like something else. And so this is where, instead of what do we do, we're going to pivot to what Allie do. And this is a part of the show where we're going to ask you, what would Allie Sippala go back and tell her 18-year-old self, or tell other 18-year-olds out there today so they can live their best life?
All right, so what I would tell my 18-year-old self is when I was 18, I was trying to chase things, right? So I was chasing school and sports and relationships and success in my career. And I was looking to all of those things for fulfillment. And as those things came about, that wasn't exactly what my soul needed. So I think my biggest advice for my 18-year-old self would be understanding your true identity and who you really are, and how all these other things in life, it's like so great to be motivated and so great to take advantage of these opportunities, but they don't define you. And just understanding who you are, I think, is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think that's great. We call it sense of self. It's hard to figure out where you're going if you don't really know, who you are, right? So that's very great. Appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. And that would be a great segue to another topic of maybe health and wealth. So as we're talking about genetics and genetic testing, and that can help your health in terms of the predisposition that you might have within your makeup as a human being. But what about the balance, and what would you, as now I know a new business owner, but certainly who's someone who has been in the rat race for a while, starting the company and getting it to where it is, but balancing a business with free time, again, whether it's your spirituality, exercise. I know you are an accomplished runner as well. So what would be some advice you'd give to our audience about the balance that you need to make in life?
So balance is huge, and I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. I know that's something that I've struggled with in the past too, but I think setting goals is really helpful. So with running, like having like a race on the calendar, and that kind of forces you to like get out there and run all the time, or um, prepping meals ahead if you need to make sure that you're eating healthy. And I think the biggest thing for me is just choosing a couple things that are really important to you, because when you're super busy, you're maybe not going to be able to hit everything, but just decide what's most important in your life right now. So like scheduling time for your family. And that's like something that I love with like the calendar, is putting your family and your priority stuff on first and then putting work on after, So putting what needs to get done that is so important to you in your life, and then work's going to fill everything else up, right? But as long as you have those important things on your calendar, and you're spending time with your family, and you're spending time in your community, and you're making time to do things for others, then I think that your life will be really great.
Right on. A balance of work and life, and you have to kind of figure it out. Are you someone who is an early riser and likes to get up and do things while everyone else is still, catching their sleep, 6 a.m. so to speak? Or are you more of the night owl and, are up, I don't know, 11, 12, 1 a.m., or maybe doing the whole thing? But what's your work-life balance?
I'm both. So I love getting up in the morning. I love an early morning workout. And I also feel like my best mentally productive hours are the morning hours versus the night hours. But then I also find myself staying up late as well. So.
Well, curiosity, they say, killed the cat. I don't even know what that means, but knowledge is power. Maybe that's a better one, to really understand that there's so much out there, and being curious and learning is a never-ending, routine. Certainly for me as well. We're getting kind of close to wrapping up our time today, Allie. So we can maybe share anything else that's on your mind, or that you want to make sure that you pass on to our audience today. Maybe talk about your URL, your company website, anything else having to do with your company, yourself, or just other messages that you'd like to share with our audience today.
I think the most important thing that I've done in my life that's really changed it, other than spiritually, is setting wildly big goals that you don't know if you can achieve. So, like for example, like I signed up for a 100-mile race last year, and I wasn't 100% sure if I could do that, but I knew like I would try my hardest. And when you set a really big goal like that, and like you're in the race, and you're like, and you have like, maybe a doubt or something, just pushing through that, and then just really seeing how much you're capable of. I went into that race. So I had a 60-mile race 2 weeks before. Mile 2, I sprained my ankle, and I kept going in that race. I like had the mindset that like no matter what happened, I wasn't going to quit. And I didn't. And then 2 weeks later, I'm at the start line for a 100-mile race with a sprained ankle. But, when you like push through those things, I think that really changes who you are. The most recent thing I did, I just finished this week, was a 40-day fast. And when I started that, even like the first like week was really brutal. And my boyfriend, he was like, I wasn't even sure if you were going to make it. And there were like days that were like extremely painful, but like pushing through those things just really shows you what you're capable of. And the first challenge I ever did was calendar club. So day 1, you run 1 mile all the way till the end of the month. You're running 26, 27, 28, 30 miles in a row. And that is what helped me know that I was capable of running my own business, is just being able to push yourself like that every day, and the strength that you can find. And also, like, I'm someone who has a lot of willpower, but when you like rely on like Holy Spirit or like your inner strength or on God, you are capable of so much more than you think. So like pushing yourselves to challenges that you don't know if you can do, I think really change who you are.
And then what about, thank you for very much for sharing. What about if you happen to stumble or fail? What if something doesn't work out? How is your mindset something that is a roadblock or something that just takes longer? How is your mindset to either continue through or to just let it go?
You learn so much. So my first ultra race, I didn't finish. So I signed up on a whim. I went to the DAC, I saw Jesse Itzler speak, and he told a story of a guy who had only run 5 miles in his life and did a 100-mile race by saying, I will not quit. And it was just about the power of positive thinking. So I was like, all right, that week I signed up for a 60-mile race. I mean, I hadn't done anything close. I hadn't even been training. I was spending too much time at work. And I show up to I Amazon priming like the equipment. I've never even run with a backpack before, and it like got there just in time. My parents were so worried. They like came to support me, thank gosh, but like they were encouraging me to quit the whole time. And I was like, no, I'm gonna do this. And I got like halfway through the race and it was pretty painful. And at that point they knew I wasn't on pace to finish the race in time, but I was like, I'm gonna go as far as I can. And then I made it 52 miles out of 60 before the time cut off, and I wasn't even upset, like just going out there. And I did learn that the power of saying positive things out loud does work. And what's wild is, even though I wasn't the fastest, I don't know if you've heard of hitting the wall when you run a marathon. Like running a marathon goes pretty well, but then about mile 20, you hit what's like called a wall, and like your legs get so heavy and it's like hard to keep going, and you're in like all this pain like out of nowhere, and people don't like, and it's like you have to push through. But I was so positive in that race, I didn't hit a wall. And that was like a huge accomplishment for me, and just understanding that you can like speak things into existence, right? If your ankle's hurting, okay, pray over it, forget about it, and keep going. Don't give your pain attention, and just focus on, like, if you ask me how I'm feeling, I'm probably exhausted, probably hurting, but I'm going to tell you I feel fantastic. I'm going to say I feel incredible. I'm going to focus on what a beautiful day it is and how blessed I am to actually even be running, So So yes, sometimes you won't achieve your goals, but there are so many positives that you can take away from an experience like that, and just the community that you meet and the stories of different people that you hear along the way are just phenomenal.
Yeah, it's really encouraging. Absolutely. All right, let's let our audience know your website of the new company, as well as just how can they find you on social media or other places to learn more about Allie Sippala.
So my company Instagram is onebodygenetics.com. My Instagram's Allie Sippala, and I'm also on LinkedIn, Allie Sippala and One Body Genetics.
Well, Allie, it's been great having you in studio today. Thanks so much for joining us. For our audience out there, again, in YouTube world or podcast nation, thanks for tuning in. Please give us a follow, give us a subscribe, share this podcast with your friends and your family, because again, as a team, together, everyone achieves more. And so to wrap up the show, as I always say, live your best life, be radically generous, a great big booyah to ya. And this has been another episode of the What Do We Do podcast with the amazing Allie Sippala, but we're just getting started. Booyah to ya. Thanks for being here, Allie. It was
Thanks
great.
for having me. It was so good to be here.
Awesome.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general information purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or any specific security. It's only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. As always, please remember investing involves risks and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional.